Hi, David Vizard here, and you are watching PowerTec 10. Let me remind you, this is a channel where we don't tolerate BS and we try and straighten out the bad guys and promote the good guys. So let's get on with the show. What is the show? Well, this is another one of my driving deals here. So you want to be a race car driver, and you can at any age. What I'm going to deal with now is reaction times. Those time slips you get, which tells you what your RT is, are lying to you. That is not your reaction time. That is your capability of anticipating when the lights will change when you've given sufficient warning to time it out. In other words, it's a question of just how rhythmic you can be by counting the lights down and knowing exactly when to hit them. Reaction time would be, we went from a red light to a green light instantly. That's reaction time. We have no warning to it. Pro stock is the nearest you'll get to a reaction time. I like racing pro stock lights with I don't know what it is, 0.4 of a second. My reactions are quick enough where I have to actually pause slightly so I don't get a red light. And that's even after I've staged as shallow as I can. I know when we were teaching my daughter how to drag race, and of course she was going to be going on a pro start, we had to actually slow her down because she just kept getting red lights. And you know, that's not a tree in the normal sense. That's a red, amber, green. What we're talking about here is not quite reaction time. There's 3 reaction times that we need to cover here, and they're all relevant to at least some form of racing. The first reaction time we've got is one that is totally within our brain. How do we know what our reaction time is going to be when all we've got to do is realize that something has happened? We've gone from not knowing it's happened to it happening. We have not had to move a muscle. Well, fortunately, I had a situation which just by chance allowed me to check to see what my maximum reaction time was without actually doing anything. Now here's what happened. I'm driving along the road and I'm looking for a house, a number. So I'm not looking at the actual road. And I drove over a loose manhole cover. And just before I'd looked at that, I was making sure I wasn't speeding because I was in a village. And I was doing 30 miles an hour. And the manhole cover, when I hit one edge of it, went clang. Then I hit the other edge and it went clang. Before it hit the second clang, I realized I'd hit a loose manhole cover. What does that work out to in time to realize that something had happened? Well, let me tell you. Well, I didn't say that quite right. Well, let me tell you, Pilgrim. That calculation works out to 57 thousandths of a second. Now, is that fast or slow? I don't know what anybody else is. But I'm sure I'm really up there with the top, say, 2% or so. Track performances kind of indicate that. The next stage is to look at actual reaction times where we have to move muscles, i.e. probably a leg onto a brake pedal, or maybe even a finger onto a keyboard button. We'll look at that now. So let's see how fast I am now. When this box turns green, I have to click it with the mouse. 238 milliseconds or 0.238. Not too bad for somebody who's coming up for 81. 238 again. $221. Maybe I need to warm up. $222. So, what you have just seen here is pure reaction time. No warning, green. Now then, what you have at the start line of a typical countdown tree is a warning that it's going to go green. It goes orange, 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 green. So you've got plenty of time to figure out when it's going to go green. So it's now a question of your timing it right so that you don't cross that staging line until it's just gone green, and then a millionth of a second later you cross it. So what you're doing here is you're anticipating getting the timing just right to go over. Let's just look at a regular tree as we've done in the Mustang. See that getting a good start is a question of either Andy or I hitting that start line just as it goes green. For myself, I typically floor the throttle the moment the orange light goes on. Still haven't got the start sorted out with that torque converter, boost, traction, suspension deal yet. Andy seems to be able to consistently get better times than that. Let's look at a real start. And I'm talking about a pro start here where it goes orange, green. We get all the lights come on. Orange, green. Now, you could say, well, you've got a warning. No, it's not quite that simple. What happens is you've got to take into account the reaction time of your car. But before we deal with that, let's just have a look at this video here because it will show just how fast a good pro stock driver can get off the line. Now, these two guys here on this, and I think I only show one, did excellent starts. This was a meeting that I'll put where the meeting was in his NHRA meeting. Yeah, their pro stock stuff's always good, but there again, I'm a pro stock fan. The technique is they have to stage very, very shallow and have very fast reaction times such that the car and their reaction times comes to slightly more than the time it takes for the orange to go green. I think the orange is on 4/10 of a second.
Been on rails all weekend long. We're handicapping the deal. Pacino, been more consistent. The Touring has one better run.
Now watch the lights on the right hand side of this shot here. This is the first frame where the lights go on. Repeatedly going back and forth from the frame just before the car moves to the frame just after shows this. We're shooting at 30 frames a second here, and it took 7 frames before the car to move from when the yellow went on. With the camera rolling at 30 frames a second, 7 frames before motion is detected represents 0.233 of a second. that's mighty quick. And that truly is a reaction time, because that all took place with no forewarning. Well, I analysed the response times of both those cars, and they were both fast. Basically, we can say that if we subtract the reaction time of the car, and it appeared to be about 3 frames, that these guys have got a reaction time which is world class. I estimate that the car that I did the most investigation on, the guy reacted to it in 0.19 of a second or maybe less, which means that basically he's world class reaction time. Now, that is a true reaction time. What we are now going to analyze is the reaction time where you have to make a decision, which is much more applicable to road race cars. With drag racing, you know that when something happens to that light, you better be on your way to going. On the other hand, when something happens on a road course, you have 2 decisions to make. One, should you react to it? And 2, actually reacting to it. Right? So you've got 2 decisions which involves a longer reaction time. Let's analyze that now. Now, the situation I'm describing here can be likened to the one that occurred to one James Butler Hickok back in the Wild West. Now, this guy was better known as Wild Bill Hickok. And during a gunfight where he had numerous adversaries, I think it was probably 4 or 5 guys, he heard somebody coming up behind him, swung round and shot twice and killed that person. That person was Mike Williams. Mike was not only his deputy sheriff, but also a close friend. What we see here is that Wild Bill had to respond to not 1, but 2 situations. The first was to recognize somebody was there and be prepared to shoot. Secondly, he had to recognize that a decision needed to be made as to whether friend or foe. So 2 decisions. Unfortunately, the second one didn't play in. This situation plagued him for the rest of his life. Now, we have a similar situation on road courses. You react to something. Now, what should your reaction be? To get a better understanding of where we're going now in our next phase, I need to slightly change courses to something that is very relevant and influential in our decision making on the track. This is called target fixation. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this. It's typically mentioned in connection with fighter pilots who are in a dogfight and they're chasing the plane that's in front of them, and that's the target, and they get fixated on it to the point that all else in the entire universe might as well not exist. Well, there's always the guy that can get on your tail and shoot you down. What happens is, with this target fixation, is that it can completely override your ability to react to something. Not forever, but completely override it to the point where it's delayed substantially. Now, let me give you a sad example here. I was watching an Indy race, I guess it was 5-6 years ago, maybe more, where a well-known driver got killed. As it happened, they had some shots from above. And when I was watching the deal in slow motion, I noticed that a guy that was probably 4 or 5 cars back from our victim did not brake until way after the signal, i.e. crash in front, reached him. He must have delayed his braking time by at least a second. At the speed they're going at with the downforce on the car, that means that when he did put the brakes on, which was almost totally too late, he was going about 60 or 70 miles an hour faster than he would have done had he reacted straight away. Situation in front. Boom. As a result, our star driver got killed, which was very saddening at the time. Now, you could say, well, he might have still been killed. Do you realize how much energy you will lose if you drop your speed from, say, 180 miles an hour around 120? I'll tell you, it halves the kinetic energy. But another second would have passed before he arrived at the scene of the accident, and he may well have hit the car in a sufficiently different place to have not caused any further injury to that driver. Now, how does target fixation come about with a race car driver? Exactly the same as it does with a fighter plane. Now, I did have a contact who knew a lot about target fixation, far more than I do. Unfortunately, I have lost contact with him, which was a shame. It's not like he was a close friend or anything. He called me up on something and we spoke at target fixation, and it turned out that it was one of his specialities in the forces. Now, how can we avoid target fixation? Good point. It's kind of glued into the person's psyche. If you are aware that you can get target fixation, you can make a big step towards overcoming it. The way to do that is to not focus entirely on one aspect. With a race car driver, it's get your foot on the throttle and don't lift until you hit a wall. Kind of. Well, no, it's not. Now, a situation which occurred to me with target fixation from cars behind was that I saw a car 2-3 rows up from me. This was a race where I had not a very good qualifying session, right? Problem cropped up. So I was about 10th or 11th on the grid. Now, a situation cropped up in front of me on about the 3rd corner after the start, whereby a car spun. I saw that the way he spun, he was going to probably have the car immediately behind him hit him, and they were more or less going to block the track and a good bit of the grass to the side. So I put the brakes on heavily. Now, behind me were 2 other cars, and it was a downhill into this corner. So they had a plan view of the track. So they should have seen this accident as easily, if not more easily, than me. So although it was further away, they were looking down on it, whereas I was approaching the flat bit. Now, here's the deal. Both of those cars had maybe as much as a second longer to react to this crash. Yet both of them ran into the back of me. Didn't destroy the car, but sure didn't help it, right? So I completed a race with the trunk, and that really bashed in. Anyway, there's an example there. Now, the way to avoid it is to make sure that you kind of dart your eyes over more than one thing. Don't stare at it. Don't get the foot on throttle, never lift deal here, because target fixation can take place more than visually. It can take place in your foot on the throttle. So it's situational awareness you have to have. Now, I've mentioned Graham Hill before, right? Probably mentioned him a lot because, you know, I was a big fan of his. He was very good with situational awareness, although his reaction times were nothing special. He was at best average, but situational awareness, very good. At one Indy race, a multiple car crash, I mean probably 6, 7, 8 car crash happened almost right in front of him. And it's almost like he knew this was going to happen and calmly drove between all the cars like, well, I knew he was going to be here to pick up 6 or 7 places, right? That's an easy way of doing it. So target fixation can be avoided by having better situational awareness. Now, it's not something that comes necessarily naturally. People do have a propensity for it or not, but you can train yourself to compensate for it by having this situational awareness and being aware that you have to have it. That's something that you need to focus on right away. As soon as you get in a race car, situational awareness. Do not focus on one spot. Focus on the big scene with a tendency to look at where your, how shall I say, target is. How do we know whether we've got good responses to making that second decision? That's pretty easy. Here's a test you can do. You'll need a buddy for this. Take 2 coins, one silver, one bronze colored, right? So you get a 50-cent piece and a penny. Have a person stand on a table or something firm, step ladder, whatever, such that they are 4 feet off the ground, and their hands will have 1 coin in one hand, 1 coin in the other hand, held close like this. And their hands need to be approximately 9 feet off the ground. What they do is they will let a coin go. Now they need to shuffle these coins behind their back so they don't know which one is in which hand. They need to let those coins go. You stand on the floor below them, their hands will be up here somewhere out of the picture. And they let 1 coin go. One you have to catch, the other one you have to leave. Now, if you've got good situational reactions, you will be able to catch whichever the allotted coin is you have to catch before it hits the floor. So say you have to catch the silver one. If that one is let go, you have to be able to catch it before it hits the floor. If the penny is let go, you have to recognize it's the penny and let it hit the floor. If you can do that, then you will be assured that you have the reactions to make a situational decision. That is very valuable. Very valuable. You will keep your car in a lot better shape. May even save your life. Okay, let's think about this. Can we improve our reactions? Well, it would appear the answer to that is both yes and no. You are born with a certain ability to have good or slow reactions. Right, might not be totally fixed, but there is that certain base level. Now, what can happen in life is you can make that base level worse. That's what happens to most people. Smoking, drinking, late nights don't do any good for your reaction time. Oh, and by the way, girls, typically you have faster reaction times than guys, right? I think Shirley Muldowney is a good, how shall I say, example of somebody who's pretty much lightning on the start line. Anyway, oh, hi Shirley. So indulging in a, how shall I say, less than clean living does not help your reaction time. Now, you can fine-tune what is there. Exercising helps. If you're overweight, it slows you down. If you are lethargic from anything, it's going to slow you down. So what you need to do is live good. Keep those senses sharp. Also, you need to make sure your eyesight is up to scratch. So if you have to have glasses, contact lens, or whatever, to get your eyesight as good as possible, then get that done. That's important for road racing. And I think the only other thing that I can think of is a little bit of practice doesn't hurt. I say a little bit. Maybe every day do a coin catching, a single coin catching deal. That's where you have somebody stand in front of you with a coin, they let it go and you have to catch it before it hits the floor. And you can have your, here's the holding hand here, here's your hand here. Or the coin, here's the hand holding the coin. Let me use this as an example. Here's the hand holding the coin, here's your hand. They let it go and you have to catch it before it hits the floor. Now, if you're really fast, you should be able to put your hands behind your back and still catch it before it hits the floor. But not many of you will. There's another one, catching a dollar bill. What you do here, let me get a piece of paper to simulate this. We'll say this is a dollar bill and the person has to hold it like this, and this is the person holding here. You have your hands down here and they let go of it. You have to catch it before it hits the floor. Now, of course, I know I'm going to let go of it, so that doesn't count. But if you can catch that dollar bill or a pound note, you'll be doing good. And I guess that brings us to the end of dealing with reaction times. We will now move on to some driving attributes that you need to address. So until the next time, this is David Vizard. You all take care, be safe in your racing, and don't forget to subscribe, have us notify you, comment, share, and super thanks. We could do with the money. It's coming up for race season. We need to do a lot of research. Thank you for watching.